Hi, Daniel Swartz here from Wisconsin. Well, this is round 4. I was right on round 3. I had gone down and given the kids a stern warning about talking because we got a small house and I want to make this video without too much background noise. And try it again. This is round 4. There might be some noise because the little ones, they have a hard time staying quiet. Anyway, so I had asked a while back about how to honor your parents biblically when they are not honoring or respecting you and haven't filled their biblical role as leaders of the family. So, how do you honor and respect and love them in that situation? So, I want to say this right to start with. I read the Bible, and I get a lot of my ideas from the Bible. But not everything in the Bible is directly stated. This is exactly what you have to do in this situation. But you can read from the Bible and glean how you're supposed to behave and how you're supposed to treat people. So I've taken what I know from memory and from my readings, and I did a little more reading. I've taken all this and combined it into my thoughts and my opinions, and I want to put that out there right out front. This is how I think I need to behave, and I do think the reason I'm sharing is because I do think it's useful, and I think many people could use this in their lives. But I would want to encourage anybody to examine what I say for yourself. Discard what doesn't work for you. But really, this is more of a starting point to get you to start thinking for yourself and not just do what you've always been told and what you've always heard, but to think and to look this stuff up on your own. Okay, so let's start with some things in the Bible. So about what the Bible says about honoring your parents and respecting your parents. I mean, when in the days of Moses and the 10 Commandments, one of the commandments is honor your father and mother. And it is interesting that the first commandment said honor, not obey. So this is just very general. I'm not going to go through every part of the Bible that talks about this. Just the few that I liked. And you can look through the Bible with that intent in your brain and look for it yourself. In Matthew chapter 19, 17 through 19, Jesus commands his followers to follow the commandments. Don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't lie. Honor your father and mother. Love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew chapter 15 and 4 says that if you curse your father or mother, you should be put to the death. Proverbs 17 says the eye that mocks a father or scorns an old mother will be pecked out by the ravens of the valley and be eaten by the vultures. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 24 talks about tells children to obey your parents in the Lord. That's important. Not just obey your parents, but obey your parents in the Lord. For this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with the promise. The promise is that if you honor your father and mother, things will go well with you and you can live long in the land. And this was, and that is balanced immediately by the command of fathers, do not exasperate and frustrate your children. Instead, bring them up in instructions and the trainings of the Lord. So this is always balanced by, obey your parents, but your parents' father, who is the head of the household, is supposed to be fair. Because a father is going to be a judge in his own household. You're going to have to judge disputes amongst your children and judge whether they're right or wrong and be fair. You're going to have to give out punishments. You're going to have to give out responsibilities. And a good and God-honoring father is going to try to be fair. Now, your kids might not think you're being fair, but you do your best to be fair according to the children's abilities. And according to the situation, you do your absolute best. That is what the Bible commands a father. The father is supposed to take care of his household and be sober and sober-minded and love his wife as if she is part of himself. Mother and father are supposed to love each other as if it's an extension of themselves. And they're supposed to work together. They're supposed to honor God. They're supposed to honor their children and not frustrate their children needlessly. And teach them how to live and how to honor God and all these things. This is the command of the parents. It's always balanced out in the Bible. And then the children are commanded to obey their parents. Now there's a good question there as to what age children. So I'll get to that part a little later on. But the Bible also talks about you get to be an adult and a man wants to marry. It says, therefore a man shall leave his parents and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So in that verse, to me, I don't see that as necessarily having to be a physical removing. Let's say if you are working together in a family business, or in the days of old, you have a larger household. You don't have to physically leave the household or leave the business just because you married your wife. And possibly even you could live in the same house. What it's talking about there is before your wife, your father and your mother were your highest responsibility. They were the ones that you gave your resources and your love to, and your respect and admiration and honor and all of those things. They came first in your life. After God, then your parents, then yourself. Okay, now you're married to your wife. That dynamic changes. Suddenly your wife is first. As far as earthly beings, your wife is first. She is before your parents. She's before yourself. It's God, then your wife, then your parents. I would even argue that once you have children, the children, it's your wife, your children, then your parents. Go down. Stop making video. We are 8 minutes in and they already forgot the instructions. I hear the baby crying. Somebody probably came up to say the baby's crying. Okay. Anyhow. So, in Ephesians 5:31 states the same as Genesis 2:24. A man shall leave his parents and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. 1 Corinthians talks of letting one who does not believe go. And that might have some bearing on this subject a little later on. Okay. Psalm 127 speaks of children as a great blessing to the parents. Timothy 5-8 says that if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. So if you have a claiming to be Christian parent or parents who they claim to love and follow the Lord, but do not take care of people who are depending on them, like actual dependents, then they are worse than an unbeliever. It didn't say that they're unbelievers. It said they're worse than them. That's interesting. Proverbs 15:1 says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but harsh words stir up anger. Okay, so let's say you're, in this example, this is what I'm specifically talking about. The parents are not actually fulfilling their role. They struggle with life. Let's say have a alcohol addiction, and the alcohol becomes the most important thing in the parent's life, or there's potentially the parent is just an angry and bitter person, and or a gossiper, and they focus so much on themselves and their own disappointments in life that they forget to take care of their children and teach them in the way they should go. And then later on in life, when those parents are really struggling and you're grown and you're earning money, they expect your help. They demand it. And if they don't receive what they think that they're owed, they will lash out and they will take it out on you. This is the instances I'm talking about. So how do you honor your parents in that situation? So obviously, when your alcoholic father puts the alcohol before everything and the importance of his own family and the needs of his family, you can't obey your father when your father tells you to go to town and buy some alcohol. That would be helping him to destroy his own family. So when you're a little child, you get caught because you do obey, because if you don't, you're going to get a direct punishment. Well, we're not really talking about little kids here. We're talking about grown adult children who have become responsible in their own life and have taken control of their own life, and they're responsible and they have their own family. And then the adult parents of the adult children begin to exert pressure, and they want the child to honor them and obey them as the Bible says, and to provide for them as Timothy 5-8. They will use this. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. They will use verses like that to work on your conscience, to try to convince you that you, as the adult child, are supposed to provide for their needs. And I would say, generally, this is true, but on condition. So, I would say an interesting thing to note is households. When we speak of household in our Western civilization and in our rich countries, it's very, very different than households of biblical times, at least from my understanding. The households of today that came about because of modern technology, wealth, and peace that we have throughout these countries. We're not in fear of being invaded by some raiders. We can each live extremely independently. We're not living in compounds or large units for protection. We can each go out, and because of peace, we don't have to worry about some other power coming and stealing our land. We don't need to group up together so that we're powerful enough to fight off other people. This is true of most of civilization. It's just in the last, 300 years? Maybe not even, probably not even. I'd say definitely the last 200 years, it has advanced. Individual independence and ownership of properties has advanced far beyond, and you know what, I'm running up to 14 minutes here. I better make this 2 videos, otherwise this thing isn't going to load. So, we'll come right back.